My name's Ethan. I'm 34, single, no kids, and up until recently, I thought I was doing the right thing by being there for my family, even when they rarely, if ever, were there for me. I have a decent job in IT, nothing flashy, but it pays the bills and gives me enough stability to own a modest 3-bedroom home on the edge of a quiet suburb. It's not a mansion, but it has a backyard with a fig tree, a little guest room, and, most importantly to me, peace. At least, it used to. My parents moved in 5 years ago after my dad got laid off and my mom's arthritis made it hard for her to work long shifts. It wasn't meant to be permanent. Just a few months, they said, until we get back on our feet. I didn't think twice. They raised me, after all. The least I could do was give them a place to stay. But a few months turned into years. And over time, that gratitude they once had slowly twisted into entitlement. They never paid rent, never contributed to utilities. I covered the groceries, the internet, their prescriptions, even their streaming subscriptions. If I ever brought it up, even gently, my mom would sigh like I'd just asked her to chop wood with her bare hands. "You know we're struggling," she'd say. "Family helps family." My dad would just nod silently or change the subject. I started noticing little things. My mom would accidentally move my laundry out of the dryer and leave it crumpled on a chair so she could dry a single pair of socks. Dad took over the living room most days, watching old war movies at full volume while I tried to take Zoom calls from my home office. I once asked if they could keep the noise down while I worked, and my mom just muttered, "Maybe you should get a real office if you're so sensitive." That one stung. Then there was my sister, Rachel. She's 31, married, lives 20 minutes away in a 2-story house her husband's parents helped them buy. She visits maybe once a month. Not to help, no, usually to lecture. "Ethan, you spoil them," she'd say, flipping her sleek blonde hair back like she was the voice of reason. "You shouldn't enable them like this." I always wanted to scream, "Then take them in yourself," but I never did. I bit my tongue. I always did. I think it was the illness that changed everything. Not a dramatic hospital scene or anything. Just a quiet, creeping weakness. I started feeling dizzy, lightheaded. Food had no taste. My joints ached like they belonged to a much older man. I'd get winded walking up the stairs. After some blood work, my doctor said it looked like an autoimmune flare-up. He wasn't sure which one yet. Maybe lupus, maybe something else, but it meant I needed to rest. Eat better. Avoid stress. Which, of course, was laughable. I came home that night, drained and foggy, and my mom was yelling at the microwave. She'd put metal in it again. The kitchen smelled like scorched plastic. My dad was asleep on the couch with half a sandwich on his chest, and Platoon was blaring on the TV. I remember just standing there, swaying slightly, trying to keep my composure. I asked, calmly, almost apologetically, if one of them could help with groceries that week. Just this once. My mom glanced up from the scorched mess, rolled her eyes, and said, "We're not your maids, Ethan." She didn't even say it with anger. Just boredom. Like I was asking her to fluff my pillows or wash my car. I blinked, waiting for my dad to say something. He didn't. And then Rachel, who just happened to be over for one of her check-ins, chimed in from the kitchen island without even looking up from her phone. "Maybe budget better, Ethan." I wish I could say I exploded. That I screamed, through something, finally let out everything I'd bottled up for 5 years. But I didn't. I just stood there, my grocery list still in my hand, and nodded. "Okay," I said. That was it. Just that. I didn't speak to any of them for the rest of the evening. I went to bed early, but I didn't sleep. My mind spun through every time I picked up their prescriptions, every birthday gift I'd bought and never received in return, every dish I washed after they left food crusted in the sink. I thought about my childhood, how my parents always had a "we're doing our best" excuse for every missed recital or forgotten birthday. How Rachel was the golden child, and I was just expected to understand. Always. The next morning, I got up before anyone else. I made myself a quiet cup of coffee and stared out at the fig tree swaying in the breeze. I thought about what peace used to feel like. I realized I hadn't felt that in years. So I opened my laptop and started searching locksmiths. Found one with same-day service. Booked it. By noon, the guy was at my door, cheerful and fast. I told him I'd lost a key. He didn't ask questions. Changed the locks. Gave me 2 fresh keys and a receipt. I tipped him extra. Then I packed their things, quietly, respectfully. 2 suitcases each. Some of the stuff I boxed up. labeled it with their names, left everything neatly on the porch. They were out at the grocery store. My dad must have finally gotten off the couch, and I didn't expect them back for a few hours. When they did return, I was upstairs in my office with headphones on. I heard the front door rattle, then knock, then pounding, then my mom's voice, shrill and incredulous. "Ethan, what the heck is this?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Rachel called next, then texted. "Are you serious right now?" she wrote. "This is unhinged." I watched the chaos unfold from my upstairs window. My parents were standing in the driveway, flustered and confused. My mom was calling someone. I'm guessing Rachel. My dad just kept shaking his head like he couldn't believe it. My mom glanced up at the house, shielding her eyes from the sun, and shouted, "Ethan, this isn't funny." But I wasn't laughing. I just sat there quietly, a strange calm settling over me for the first time in what felt like forever. That's when my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Rachel. I played it on speaker, hands folded in my lap. "Ethan, whatever you think you're doing, you need to stop." Mom's crying. Dad's exhausted. God, you're being dramatic. Just open the door and let's talk, okay? This is your family. You don't abandon people." I stared at the phone, then glanced at the locked front door below. For 5 years, they lived under my roof. Rent-free. No gratitude. No help. And now, the second I asked for a shred of support, I'm the one being dramatic? I picked up the phone, typed out a single message. I didn't send it yet. I was still deciding if I should. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. And that's when I saw Rachel's car pull up behind my parents in the driveway, tires crunching on the gravel, her door flinging open like she was about to stage some dramatic intervention. But what she did next made everything 10 times worse. She didn't even walk up to the house. She got out of her car in a fitted blazer and heels like she had just come from brunch, took one look at my parents standing helplessly beside their bags, and immediately turned the situation into a full-blown scene. Hands on hips, she scanned the porch, the suitcases, and then looked up at my window with that signature Rachel expression, disgusted and smug, like she was the adult cleaning up some teenager's mess. "You changed the locks?" she shouted loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "Are you serious, Ethan? Are you out of your mind?" My mom turned to her like she'd just been saved from a shipwreck. "He kicked us out," she gasped. "Like we're strangers. After everything we've done." Rachel stormed up to the front steps, grabbed one of the suitcases, and yanked it toward the door, as if sheer force would magically unlock it. "This is abuse," she called out. "You can't just evict your parents without warning. This is illegal." That's when I finally got up. I walked downstairs slowly, calmly, like I had all the time in the world. I opened the door halfway and leaned against the frame. "Hi, Rachel," I said. "Abuse? That's a little dramatic." Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't funny." "I agree," I said. "It stopped being funny 5 years ago." Mom stepped forward, looking suddenly fragile. Her tone softened. "Ethan, honey, can we please talk about this? This isn't like you. You've always been the good one." That part hit me harder than I expected. The good one. Not the loved one. Not the respected one. Just the one who stays quiet and keeps giving. I took a deep breath. "You've lived here for free for half a decade. I paid for everything, groceries, bills, even your doctor's visits. I never asked for rent. Never asked for anything, really." Mom nodded quickly, seizing the opening. "And we're grateful." "No, you're not," I cut in. "When I got sick last week, all I asked for was help with some food. And you looked me in the eye and said, 'We're not your maids.' Then Rachel told me to budget better. That's when I realized I don't live with family. I live with entitled squatters." Rachel's jaw dropped. Well, you really think you're some kind of victim, huh?" "No," I said, locking eyes with her. "I think I'm finally done being one." She scoffed and shook her head. "So what? You want to be alone? You want to end up bitter and miserable in this house all by yourself?" "I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who only show up to take." My dad had been quiet this whole time. He sat down on the low stone step at the edge of the porch like the weight of it all had just hit him. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd say something human. But all he did was rub his temples and mumble, "You should have said something if you weren't happy." I nearly laughed. Said something? As if my exhaustion, my pleading glances, my half-hearted attempts at setting boundaries hadn't been screaming volumes. Rachel took a step forward, her tone shifting from outrage to icy calm. "If you don't let them back in, I'll call the police. I'll say you threw out 2 sick seniors without notice." I smiled. because I had been waiting for that. Go ahead, I said. But you might want to tell them about the 5 years of free rent, the groceries, the medical bills. And while you're at it, let them know I documented everything, bank statements, messages, even the house camera footage of you laughing when Mom told me to budget better. You think they're going to side with you? Her face twitched for a split second, just enough for me to know she hadn't expected that. You're being cruel, she snapped, her voice rising again. This is family, Ethan. No, I said quietly. This is the consequence. There was a long silence after that. The kind that doesn't just sit in the air but settles into your skin. My mom was crying now, actual tears. She reached for Rachel's arm and whispered, "Let's just go." Maybe he needs time. Rachel looked furious. This isn't over, she hissed. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but not today. They gathered their things reluctantly. Rachel opened the trunk of her SUV, muttering the whole time. My parents shuffled over with their bags like they were being marched into exile. No one said goodbye. No one looked back. I stood there on the porch, watching them drive off. The silence was deafening. The war movies weren't playing. There were no pots clanging in the kitchen, just the sound of birds and the faint hum of my neighbor's lawn mower. For the first time in a long time, my house felt like mine. But just as I was about to step back inside, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. This time from someone unexpected. It was my aunt, my mom's sister. And what she said in that message, it changed everything. I didn't answer right away. My aunt, Aunt Clara, wasn't someone I spoke to often. She lived 3 states away, had a soft voice and a sharp tongue, and only ever called for 2 reasons: holidays or hospital visits. So seeing her name flash across my screen immediately set off a quiet alarm in my head. Still standing on the porch, I played the voicemail with the tip of my thumb, half expecting a lecture, maybe even a guilt trip wrapped in passive-aggressive concern. But what I heard, it stopped me cold. Ethan, sweetheart, I don't know exactly what's going on over there, but your mom just called me sobbing, saying you threw them out. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I need to tell you something. There's more to this, more than you know. Call me back, please. It's important. I stood frozen for a moment, watching the street where their car had disappeared. My stomach tightened. More than I know? What did that even mean? I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the call button, before finally walking back inside, locking the door, and sinking into the couch. I didn't want to deal with more drama. Not after everything. But the way she said it. There's more to this. It didn't sound like a lecture. It sounded like a warning. So I called her back. She picked up on the first ring. Ethan, she asked, her voice lower than usual. Are you okay? Yeah, I said slowly. I mean, better than I was last week. I heard about that, she replied. Your mom told me you were sick, but she left out the part where she dismissed you like some lazy tenant. I blinked. So she admitted what she said, not in so many words, Clara said with a dry laugh. But I've known your mother a long time. I know how she tells stories, who the hero always is. There was a pause. Listen, she said, before I say anything else, I need you to understand. This isn't about picking sides. I love your parents, but you deserve to know the truth about something, especially after what they just pulled. I sat forward. Okay, she sighed, and when she spoke again, her tone shifted, lower, heavier. Do you remember when your grandmother passed away? You were what, 22? Yeah, I said. I was in college. And your mom and Rachel flew out to settle the estate? Right, I said slowly. They were gone for like 2 weeks. I barely heard from them. Well, they didn't just go out there to grieve. Your grandmother left behind a little more than anyone expected. Turns out she'd been saving for years, quietly, without telling anyone. She left behind a sizable inheritance. Not millions, but enough. It was meant to be split 3 ways: your mom, your Aunt Lydia, and you. My heart stopped. Me? Yes, you. No one ever told me that. Exactly. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to wrap my head around it. Ethan, your mom convinced Lydia, and tried to convince me, that it would be better for you if they managed the money until you were more stable. That's the word she used. Stable. Like you were some flighty kid who couldn't be trusted not to blow it on guitars and video games. I exhaled sharply, a million memories suddenly clicking into place. The odd comments about me being irresponsible. The way Rachel always teased me about needing guidance. The time I tried to buy a used car and my credit mysteriously wasn't good enough, even though I'd paid off my student loans early. You're saying they took my inheritance? They used your portion, Clara said, to pay off Rachel's mortgage and your parents' debt. All of it. That's why your dad retired early. That's how they managed those vacations a few years ago, the ones they told you were paid for with points. I felt like the room tilted. Why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't know the full story until recently. Lydia told me the truth after your mom started spinning her version of this week's drama. And to be honest, I was afraid of causing a rift. I thought maybe, if they were taking care of you, it'd all even out somehow. I laughed bitterly. They weren't taking care of me. I was taking care of them. I know that now, Clara said. And I'm sorry. I really am. There was another long pause. Then she said, Look, I don't know what you plan to do next. But if you want to fight this, legally, I have copies of the will. And Lydia's willing to talk. I didn't answer right away. My mind was racing. The pieces were falling into place, fast and sharp. My parents hadn't just taken advantage of my generosity. They'd stolen from me, lied to me, made me believe I was the burden, while they siphoned off what should have been mine and painted themselves as the victims in every chapter. And Rachel, she knew. Of course she knew. I need some time to think, I finally said. Take all the time you need, Clara replied gently. And Ethan? Yeah. I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself, even if it took 5 years. I ended the call and sat in silence. Not just shock, not just betrayal, resolve. Because now it wasn't just about locking the door. It wasn't just about setting boundaries. Now it was about justice. And as I opened my laptop again, this time searching for a lawyer, I saw a new email from Rachel, subject line in all caps. You have no idea what you've done. She was right. I didn't. But I was about to find out. I opened Rachel's email, already bracing for venom. I expected insults, maybe even threats about legal action. But what I saw was something different and far more revealing. You think you're a victim, but you're just selfish. You always were. Mom and Dad needed that money more than you. They raised you. They deserved it. All you ever did was sit back and act like they owed you something for letting them stay in that house. You think changing the locks makes you a hero? Newsflash, it makes you a petty little man. And if you go around telling people lies about inheritance or whatever Aunt Clara fed you, just remember, we're not the only ones with things to lose. That last line stuck with me. We're not the only ones with things to lose. It wasn't just passive-aggressive. It was calculated. A threat, cloaked in righteous indignation. That's when I realized this wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. This was a full-blown cover-up. They weren't just ashamed of what they'd done. They were terrified of being exposed. But the thing was, I wasn't scared anymore. I forwarded the email to myself, saved a backup to my external hard drive, and then replied with just 4 words. You'll hear from someone. The next day, I called the lawyer Clara had recommended. A man named Gregory Hahn, mid-50s, soft-spoken, but sharp as a razor. We met in his office downtown, and I brought everything. The will copies Clara had mailed over, my bank statement showing years of grocery and utility purchases, and the message history with my parents, especially the ones where they'd implied I was too unstable to manage my own money. That last part made Gregory pause and raise an eyebrow. They said that about you? He asked, skimming the printout. For years. He tapped the table thoughtfully. We can work with this. It turned out, not only had my mother and Rachel convinced Aunt Lydia to hand over my portion of the inheritance, but they'd also forged a letter from me, dated during my final year in college, stating that I had voluntarily declined any share of the estate. I had never written that letter. When Gregory showed it to me, my jaw clenched. The signature looked vaguely like mine, close enough to pass if someone wasn't paying attention. But the wording was too formal, too polished, and I never called my grandmother Ms. Margaret in writing. I always wrote, Grandma, do you want to press charges? Gregory asked me quietly. Fraud, forgery, misappropriation of assets. It was a question I never thought I'd have to answer about my own family. I thought about it for a long time. I remembered the birthdays I spent alone while they were in Florida. The time I missed a doctor's appointment because they took my car without asking and left it with an empty tank. The way Rachel always joked that I was the backup plan for everyone else's mistakes. How my mom scoffed when I asked for help with groceries. How they made me feel like a burden in my own home. I looked Gregory in the eye. Yes, I said. I do. The next 2 months were a whirlwind. Gregory filed a formal complaint. Aunt Lydia submitted a notarized statement confirming that the money was meant to be split 3 ways, and that she had handed over Ethan's portion under false pretenses. Clara provided the family group email showing how my mother and Rachel coordinated financial decisions. And I provided years of financial records, medical documents, even the voice messages and text threads. When Rachel was served with the notice of pending legal action, she lost her mind. She started calling me nonstop. First it was pleading, "This will ruin everything, Ethan. Please just drop it." Then came the rage, "You're destroying your own family. Grandma would be ashamed of you." Then silence. But what really sealed their fate was what happened during deposition. My mother, flustered, defensive, slipped up. When questioned about the letter I wrote, she admitted, on record, that she had reworded it a little so it sounded more respectful. That was it. One sentence. But it was the crack in the wall. Gregory leaned forward like a lion spotting an opening. So to clarify, the letter wasn't written entirely by Ethan? She tried to backtrack. Well, he said something to that effect. I just made it clearer. Understood, Gregory said, with a smile that was almost sympathetic. That's all I needed. From there, it was like dominoes. Rachel's bank records showed multiple payments coming directly from an account connected to the estate. She tried to claim they were loans, but there were no repayment schedules. No notes. Just cash transfers labeled, "Thanks again," and "You're the best." The court wasn't impressed. Within 3 weeks, the judgment came through. My parents and sister were ordered to repay my portion of the inheritance, plus interest. The total came to nearly $180,000. They were also fined for fraud and ordered to issue a written apology as part of the settlement. The letter had to be handwritten, signed, and filed with the court. But I didn't care about the money. Not really. I cared about the truth. Word spread fast. My extended family, who had always seen Rachel as the successful one, started reaching out to me quietly. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years sent messages like, "Good for you," and "I always thought something was off about how they treated you." One even called and said, "I remember your mom bragging about paying off their mortgage in cash," and thinking, how the heck did she afford that? They knew. They all knew something. But no one said anything because, as Clara had put it so plainly, no one wants to cause a rift in the family. But I learned something through all this. Sometimes, the rift is already there. You're just the first person brave enough to stop pretending it's not. As for my parents, they moved in with Rachel, which was poetic in a way. She went from lecturing me about enabling them to sharing her guest bathroom and splitting grocery bills. Clara told me, not so quietly, that Rachel was already venting about how they eat like teenagers and leave crumbs everywhere. I didn't respond. I was too busy enjoying the peace. The house is quiet again. The fig tree's starting to bloom, and I've turned the spare room into a reading space with sunlight, a comfy chair, and no tension humming through the walls. I still feel the sting of betrayal sometimes. There are days when I remember a moment from childhood and wonder how deep the favoritism went. But it doesn't hurt like it used to, because I fought back. I stood up for myself. And I won. Not just the case, but the life I should have had years ago. A few weeks ago, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Just a cream envelope with careful handwriting. Inside was a single sentence, "I hope one day you can forgive us." Mom, I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it up and slid it into a drawer. Not because I forgave them, but because I no longer needed to hold on to the hurt. It had already done enough damage. And now? Now, I was free.